Hi everyone, my name is Paige Valensky. For my CIP project, I chose to make a web quest about voting for my fourth graders social studies class. Like many others of you, this is my fifth and final year at Grand Valley. I'm an integrated science major with an elementary distributed minor. This semester, I was placed at Granville West Elementary in a fourth grade class. Of course, being in Granville, it's a suburban school. My CT was great, and so were my students. They were always eager to learn, and for the most part, they participated all the time. My class had 28 students. 26 were white, one was African American, and one was multiracial, so not too much diversity there. Only one student could speak a second language, and this was also the multiracial student. His mother was from Germany, and she is teaching him German. He's not completely fluent, but pretty close. He can speak with others. Most of these students live in the district. Only a few are school of choice, and most have been here since kindergarten, and they'll stay through sixth grade. There's not much transition in and out of the building. It's still a full Title I school, however. I chose to make a web quest because I need to work on finding and preparing age-appropriate websites for my students and pairing questions with content. I think it will benefit my two ADD students in my class because they can work at their own pace this way, and they can move quickly through some websites that aren't of the greatest interest to them, or they could linger and work on the websites that they really like. This will also benefit my two resource room students because their IEPs both focus on reading, so they can reread many times, make sure they fully comprehend and understand the information, rather than kind of being pushed along with the Gen Ed students. So this also benefits the Gen Ed and even more advanced students because they can move at their own pace and kind of get through the Google Doc that I added and then be able to do some more research on these websites. My students are going on a field trip to Lansing next week, so they've been working on the United States government, so that's why I chose to work on voting. I'd like that they like to be able to work on their own pace, and this really allows for the WebQuest allows for that. One thing my students struggle with though is answering open-ended questions. They get really frustrated. They want to please the teacher, and they don't know how to really finish those open-ended questions. So I have some questions that are open-ended so that they can work on that, and it can be a challenge. But I also included some closed questions to prevent frustration. Another thing we've been working on is keywords while searching on computers. They are just, they don't really know what to type in. So I have one question on the Library of Congress's website that works on that. So what I did was I found a bunch of kid-friendly websites, and then I looked through them and came up with questions that my students would be able to answer. Some of them are just a couple words, some of them ask them to write a sentence or two, or sometimes more. And like I said, some of them struggle with the open-ended questions, so I gave them the mixture of open and closed-ended. I have one student who has Asperger's, and those open-ended questions are a struggle. Oh, I did that wrong. But the open-ended questions are a struggle, and the closed-ended questions for him he can fly through. But when he doesn't have that end in mind, he struggles, and it's something he needs to work on. So the open-ended questions are going to benefit my artistic students. So it's kind of the balance of having open and closed-ended. And like I said, I made a Google Doc with the questions, and then I decided that once the students have typed up the answer, so they're going to work on typing, they'll print this out just to work on printing because we really don't have them print much because once they start, they just want to keep printing. So we try to hold that off. So instead of telling you about my web quest, I will just take you there right now. All right, so this is my web quest. I called it Go Vote. So students will learn about voting in the United States so they can be an informed citizen who understands how the voting process works. And like I said before, the students like working at their own pace, so that's what's the most beneficial. So we've been learning about how the Americans didn't want to be under the rule of Britain's king any longer. They started the American Revolution, and then they learned about the founding fathers. They are learning that once a citizen turns 18, they have a right to vote for their government, including the president. And so they're going to go through a bunch of different websites and activities and videos. All right, so I have a link to the Google Doc that they will be using. It is right here. And the questions are numbered to go along with the website, so that kind of helps them out a little bit. This is the first time they'll be working with a web quest, so I thought pairing the question with the website would be most beneficial. And of course, I'll let them go more if this works out well. I'll let them be a little more open-ended with these. So the first website is PBS Kids, and I asked them to select Stepping Through a Time Machine because I thought this one was pretty cool. So they select that one, and they can learn about different times who wasn't allowed to vote during specific times. So it says the year and what group of people weren't allowed to vote or who earned the vote in that year. So they would go back to their Google Doc, and I asked them to tell me which year they selected and tell me the group. And then I also asked them to take on the role as being a member of this group and how they would feel if they weren't allowed to vote simply because, they were a woman or they were African American or they were Native American. So there's a bunch more, and there's another PBS kid, or two more PBS Kids rather websites. They have just a wealth of information on that site, and I really liked that. Time for Kids, I thought was really cool. Unfortunately, this is from the previous election, but they put this up every year that there's a presidential election. They have a whole page with just a ton of articles next to it, and the kids, even when it's before the voting time, they are able to select who they want to vote for, and it gives them like the turnout of what the students that have visited the website have voted for, and then you can kind of see if who the kids voted for, if that plays out in office. So I asked them to read one of the articles for this question that was located on the side here, and I just wanted them to tell a few sentences about it. So that was one of the more open-ended questions. I just wanted a retell, which is another thing we're working on in our class. I asked them to go to the Library of Congress website. It's a little more adult-oriented, but it's not at all inappropriate for students. I wanted them to put in their own search terms that they think would be beneficial to this topic of voting. And they were to copy and paste two pictures that they found in the Library of Congress, and talk about why it's important to voting, why they chose these as being the most important. There's a little simulation on icivics.org, and there's two candidates who aren't actual candidates or don't even resemble them, and they're able to go through and ask their potential candidates questions, and then they choose which answer they preferred. At the end, they pick which candidate they would most likely vote for, and then it kind of breaks down what they agreed with that candidate on at the end, and so they can kind of see the connection of when you agree with more topics, when you agree with the opinions of your candidate, that's who you kind of side with, not just because they're from the same state you are or what have you. So the final clip is a clip from Schoolhouse Rock about voting, and I asked them to just find new vocabulary words and write the definitions that they've compiled through their work. And if they couldn't answer what the definition of that word was, I asked them where they could look it up. So maybe they might use Google or dictionary.com. We work on that in our daily lessons. So our conclusion was, what were your two favorite websites? And I just kind of wanted some feedback there. And then I wanted 5 new or interesting things that they learned throughout this lesson. And then I asked them to print out their web quest. Well, let's see. So what I learned is it really doesn't take that much time to compile a good list of websites, and it's going to benefit the students so much if you just take that bit of time. Um, Students are going to benefit more if you have more information than they actually need. So if they flew through that Google Doc and they're sitting there, you could say, go back to another website that you really liked and read a couple more articles or play a couple more games on there. In the future, I would use this to work with students like mine who struggle with the open-ended questions and are usually just in school trying to please the teacher. I want to give them more freedom, but they don't always want that, so I'm trying to give that to them. I also, what was with what I learned, it's just the students respond best when they're working with, cartoons and videos and songs and games. That's the stuff that they really like. So it's a lot more beneficial for them to peruse websites such as these rather than reading the textbooks. The textbooks just are not written in good kid-friendly language, and I think that this is a lot more engaging for them. And that is about it. So thank you very much.